Welcome back, Mando.
Oh, ho, ho. Greetings, Bucketheads. Mavar Tagar. Welcome to our 334th genuinely juiced for Geonosis episode of Mandovision. And I am your host, Nargai Tom. Thank you so much for checking out our small independent Star Wars podcast. We're glad you're here. Hit us up on those socials at Mando_Vision, Twitter/X and Instagram. You can do Blue Sky at Mandovision, and you can email us to mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. Bucketheads, we are back for another exciting installment of our Star Wars Rebels rewatch series. Really getting into the back half here of Season 3, the winter premiere, if you were there in 2017. Good stuff coming up in the show. And we kick it off really, really nicely, too, with going back to one of the mysteries that was sort of set up. Gosh, it feels like forever ago in the order of the show. But, yeah, we're going back to Geonosis. We're going to pick up those threads from when we were there last. I do want to talk a little bit about what happened over the weekend, because it was New York City Comic-Con. And there was some Star Wars being announced. Nothing really new as far as like the TV and movie stuff goes. No developments there. No trailers or anything fun like that. We really have information from the publishing side of the fence, and it's an interesting point in publishing for Star Wars, because with the High Republic initiative now behind us, we don't really know what the book landscape looks like, but we got a bit of an idea at New York City Comic Con, and one of the first books shared is by Madeline Rowe, and it's called Legacy, and it's about Princess Leia and Rey on a mission after The Last Jedi. And it sounds like it should be a fairly interesting book. Let me see here. It says, okay, Legacy, written by Madeline Rowe, will pair the young Jedi and the scion of the Skywalker family in a story set shortly after the events of The Last Jedi, as the duo go on a mission to repair Rey's damaged lightsaber. Filled with regrets over the death of Luke Skywalker and the seemingly final embrace of the dark side by Kylo Ren, the new master and apprentice find themselves heading to the planet Tython and its ancient Jedi temple for answers for the path forward, and forced into a trial by fire when the First Order is hot on their trail and intent on extinguishing the light of the Jedi from the galaxy once and for all. I think that sounds like a pretty interesting book. I'm kind of here for it, and the fact that they're going to Tython also sounds very, very interesting, particularly in light of the fact that there is supposed to be a Dawn of the Jedi movie. Tython factors heavily into the Dawn of the Jedi era, so that could be very, very interesting. Another book announced by Ashley Poston is Eyes Like Stars, a Star Wars romance novel. It is a Star Wars YA entry, and they didn't reveal much about the plot, but I will be perfectly frank with you guys. This doesn't seem like my cup of tea for Star Wars, and that's okay. As we've discussed before, there are Star Wars can be Baskin Robbins. There are 31 flavors of deliciousness, and this is just one of them that I don't really want. I will skip this piece of ice cream. And again, usually you're like, but all ice cream is good ice cream, even bad ice cream is good ice cream. Maybe it is. I don't know if a YA romance novel is going to be my jam, though. If enough people were to read it and persuade me otherwise, I'd reevaluate my decision. But for right now, feels like one I can miss out on and not be too upset about it. They also showed some new updated cover art for the Art of Star Wars Andor book, which is coming out in May. There is a series of Mandalorian-themed children activity books coming out, stickers, coloring books, as well as a rhyming board book called You're My Little Grogu. Well, there you go. On the comic side of things, interesting. This is one that has most of my attention, and that is a Jar Jar comic coming out. It's a one-shot. Don't get too excited. It's not a regular series or anything like that. But a Jar Jar Binks one-shot comic that will pair the beloved Gungan, infamous Gungan, with Ahmad Best's other Star Wars character, Jedi Master Kelleran Beck. Ahmad Best is co-writing the book alongside Mark Guggenheim, and it's going to be coming out in February. So I'm sort of excited about this. We get to get a little bit more of Kelleran Beck. We get a little bit more of Jar Jar on a thing together. Ahmad Best is involved as a co-writer. I think that sounds pretty awesome. And then if you're into the Viz Media and then the anime Star Wars stuff that they're doing, they have a new book coming out called Star Wars. It's going to be tied to Star Wars Visions, and it's called I'm messing this up already. Sukumo? I don't know. It's created by the creative team behind the smash hit Ultraman manga, which was the source material for the Netflix show. And it follows a masked Jedi in the wake of Order 66 as he follows two droids to a mysterious droid paradise while being hunted by the rising Empire. And that's coming out in July of next year. It's got a really cool cover, though. I definitely recommend you guys Googling it. It's Tsukumo. Sukumo. I maybe got it on one of those. We'll try. But yeah, so if you're into Star Wars publishing initiatives, well, less of an initiative, just publishing. But yeah, things to look forward to in the coming year. And I think I talked about it recently. I do need to go back and get back into the High Republic stuff, get to finish that series, because it has sort of delayed my reading of other Star Wars books. I'm really waiting to read that Bad Batch book, Sanctuary. Now, that one's like sort of like top of the pile right now after I get back into some Star Wars. I did just need to take a little Star Wars palate cleanser break. Sorry, friends. I gotta read some other stuff sometimes. As much as I love Star Wars, I can't do it 24/7. But hey, that's that. So let's go ahead and get into our episode. Let's get those episode particulars out of the way for our Star Wars Rebels rewatch. Are you ready? Here we go. This is Star Wars Rebels Season 3, Episode 12, Ghosts of Geonosis, Part 1. January 7th, 2017. Directed by Sal Ruiz, written by Dave Filoni and Stephen Melching. Primary cast for this week's episode. Taylor Gray is Ezra Bridger. Vanessa Marshall is Harrison Dula. Freddie Prinze Jr. is Kanan Jarrus. Tia Sakar is Sabine Wren. Steve Blum is Zeb Aurelios. Dave Filoni is Chopper. Phil Lamar is Bail Organa. Matthew Wood is the Battle Droid Commander and Click-Clack. Keon Young is Commander Sato. D. Bradley Baker is Rex. And Forrest Whitaker is Saw Gerrera. Our plot for this week's episode, somewhat of a misleading plot in my opinion. After finding a missing Rebel team member, the Ghost crew discovers another surprise on Geonosis and works to conceal it from Imperial forces. Well, there you have it, friends. Let's go ahead. Let's get into our episode in particular. Let's do it. Let's get ready. You know what that means. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off. You're going to have to relocate the covert. This is the way. This is the way.
So a small recording note before we dive into the episode. Just starting as we began to record the episode, there are workermen in my complex, and they are drilling and cutting into concrete. So you may hear the whine of a drill or some kind of concrete saw cutter thingamabob. I'm not a workerman. I don't know. And I apologize if it's distracting to you. I will do my best to talk over it and keep the moments of silence away from the microphone. I think it's less noticeable when I'm talking, and hopefully I have enough of a volume on my own voice that we can drown it out a little bit. But if you hear something, I do apologize. It is sort of the cost of doing business during the workday, but that is how my schedule goes sometimes. All right, so let's get into the episode. We start with the Ghost in hyperspace en route to somewhere, and we get to open with a mysterious message, but not just from Commander Sato. No. Senator Bail Organa is there to deliver the message that, hey, yeah, we're going to Geonosis because we got to find out what's going on over there. This goes back to, I believe it was in the second season when we end up at Geonosis and we see like there's evidence of large construction yards in orbit around the planet, but there's no signs of life on the planet. Well, now when we arrive at Geonosis, all the signs of work and construction in orbit around the planet are gone, have been removed. There's still no life on the planet, no signals, but a team had been dispatched to check it out, right? Like the Ghost is going to look for the team that Senator Organa originally sent to investigate. And we find out that team is led by Saw Gerrera. All right, so this is one of our first sort of documented cases of Saw and his rebels working with the not quite yet Rebel Alliance, but doing work for the Resistance in a more in less of his own methods, right? Him working with the other Rebel leadership around the galaxy, and we find out that Rex obviously has a connection, because that goes back to I think season 2 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, where Rex and Ahsoka and Anakin are training Saw and his sister Stilla on Onderon. So there's a lot of connections to the 2 prior episodes, 2 prior things that have been established, and we're building Saw Gerrera, right? Saw Gerrera at this point has now been in live action. He has been in Rogue One, and he's a very different Saw Gerrera in the movie than the Saw that we see here. We are still pre whatever injury, whatever failed mission occurred that left him in a Vader-like body with cybernetic limbs and the breathing apparatus. We're not there yet. We don't know what's happened, but this is a more stable Saw. This is a more stable is a strong word, but more stable than than we see him in Rogue One, certainly. But this is also a more capable Saw. Like, he still has all his faculties about him, still seems as a sharp of mind, and but we find out that later on he doesn't play nice with others. Still, that part of Saw is definitely a recurring theme with him, and yeah, they were the team that originally dispatched to Geonosis to find out what was going on, but all our heroes can find, all the Spectres can find, are helmets of people. So something happened. What happened? What happened to the troops? And we find out what happened. Battle droids happened. There's still some battle droids on Geonosis. And we find that there is a single Geonosian on Geonosis. And we will find him. Eventually we'll find him and call him Click-Clack. Obviously, Saw, not stoked, wants to know what has happened on the planet, trying to figure things out. But Click-Clack, hard to communicate with a Geonosian. A lot of Geonosian bigotry in this episode, too, just calling him Bug. It seemed very mean. It seemed unnecessary. We find out eventually that Click-Clack is trying to protect something. He's one of the last of his people, and he has an egg, and they believe it's to be the egg of a Geonosian queen, right? So a chance for the Geonosian people to not be wiped out completely. And that's something that we have to reconcile with in this episode, right? Because this is sort of our rated G version of seeing imperial atrocity, right? This is sort of our first taste that the Empire used the Geonosians to, build the structure of the Death Star, and then to keep them quiet about it, wipe them out with a poison gas that we will find in part 2. Spoilers. So it's a really impactful episode in that sense, because again, it's sort of our first. It's not our first taste, but it's sort of a reminder of just like what the Empire was all about during this time when they were trying to keep the Death Star a secret. And that's sort of the challenge of this episode, right? Because there's all these references, all these sort of clues that we as the audience know, but our heroes don't, and they can't find out yet because it's not time for the Death Star to be revealed. And even Click-Clack, I think they misunderstand. I think he's trying to communicate about the Death Star to them, but they misinterpret it in the next episode as being the poison containers. Now, maybe that's what he's implicating, but I think us as viewers gravitate towards the idea of Death Star. We know what's going on Geonosis, and our heroes cannot, and that is somewhat of a challenging thing for us in this episode as viewers of it, because there are certain times where you're just like, yeah, Death Star, dude, we know what's going on. Why don't you? But that's not the way the cookie crumbles in this one necessarily. We're still building to that version of the Empire that is there to elicit fear across the galaxy. We haven't really established that on this show. Like, yeah, the Empire is bad, and we've seen them do bad things, but not to the level with which we get to see it cinematically or on shows like Andor. The Rebels is still, at its heart, at its core, an all ages kind of show. So yeah, we don't get to dive into that. But we get a lot into the psychology of Saw Gerrera, which is interesting, of course. We see that he's still driven by the death of his sister, that still is very raw for him, something he's not moved past, and something that he feels the need to constantly try and avenge. He talks about a lot of things, and I don't want to go too far into it because I'm going to bleed into the second episode a little bit if I do. But there are moments that we can see Saw as sort of like hanging on by a thread. He's quick to temper. He believes he's right all the time. And again, not exactly the world's best teammate in that sense. Rex is sort of like the link between the two sides. Saw's respect for Rex sort of like keeps him in line. And there is a moment of sort of, I don't know if it's adoration I want to say, but like when he first sees Kanan and Ezra with their lightsabers and realizes that there are still Jedi out there, there is sort of a moment of at least appreciation, if not adoration, for seeing Jedi again and what they can do, and maybe knowing that, hey, if there's a couple Jedi in the fight, that might change things a little bit. That might be an advantage for us. But these things rarely go as they should. Saw Gerrera's entrance in this episode is pretty good because the realization that the battle droids are there, that Click-Clack's controlling the battle droids, but not necessarily in an effort to kill intruders necessarily. He's trying to protect himself. He's trying to protect the egg of a queen that can keep his people alive. So I think Click-Clack's motivations are very pure, if not a little bit misguided, in the sense that, when armed rebels came to investigate Geonosis, he automatically assumed that they were like the Empire and here to kill him in the egg. So you get where he's coming from that fear. Saw Gerrera feels this an opportunity to exploit Click-Clack by threatening him, by making it known that the mission is what's more important, And so we're seeing that sort of bleeding edge of Saw going too far, being like the Empire, right? One of the things one of the big things in Andor is, like Luthen says, using the tools of your enemy, right? And that's something that Saw is much more comfortable doing than Kanan and Ezra, Hera, and all the rest of them. They believe in their morals and their values and being different from the Empire, and that is what's going to aid them in their victory. And obviously, Saw Gerrera has a different approach to it. But that's what this episode's about. Like, we're setting Saw up to be different from our heroes, right? That there's more sides to the rebellion than we think there are. And the morals of each person in the rebellion are not going to match up with yours necessarily. The hows and whys each person gets associated with the rebellion is very, very different. And his priority is winning, right? He'll talk about it in the next episode. He blames the Jedi for losing the first war, and he's not going to lose the second one because of them. Saw is driven. And we see that motivation from the death of his sister, what it cost him, and how he seeks to find that vengeance everywhere he looks. So he's going to take it out on Click-Clack, because Click-Clack has answers that he wants, or at least he believes Click-Clack has answers that he wants. I think it's very, very clear that Click-Clack does not have answers that he needs or wants. Click-Clack is just there to stay alive and keep himself and his people from dying out. Click-Clack is trying to save his species. And again, Saw tries to exploit that. Ezra's become like a very empathetic character, and I love that he sort of, I don't know, he sort of like becomes like a foster, I suppose, of Click-Clack, and wants to protect him from Saw and protect him from exploitation and from being, the last of his people and getting murdered by Saw because Saw decides he knows something. So I like that conflict within the group dynamic. It's very, very interesting, very, very exciting. Meanwhile, it's all the stuff in the tunnels beneath Geonosis is the focus of the episode is really what drives it, what's important. But I do like the stuff on the surface as well because it leads to part of the mystery, right? So you have Sabine and you have Zeb, and they find a shield generator. Well, what the heck could they possibly be doing on the surface of the planet that would require a shield generator, a military-grade shield generator? And why is it just abandoned here? Like, what were they protecting with it? This leads to more of the Click-Clack confrontation because there's battle droids all around the planet, and Click-Clack is in control. He can activate them, and he does, and he gets them into a firefight. But Hera wants that shield generator for Chopper Base, so they're going to get it. And it's a lot of back and forth, but we find out once Click-Clack reveals the egg, and that he's trying to save his people, it changes the motivations. It's not just a Geonosian trying to live out the glory days of the Clone Wars by activating battle droids to kill the rebels. He's trying to save his species. He's trying to save his people. And again, this is all in the shadow of the Empire committing these horrible atrocities. So it's a really good episode that sets the table really nicely for what I think is an even stronger second part. But we get our players on the board. And again, I do find it very, very interesting with Saw Gerrera. Seeing this version of Saw that is working with these rebel cells. And you know, again, you definitely get the impression that he is there because he needs access to things, not necessarily because he wants to play nice. But that relationship between Saw and the Rebellion has always been one that's been very, very interesting. It's also been one that isn't like super well developed. I would love to get more material out of like what kind of operations Saw was running. We got tastes of it. We got glimpses of it through Andor. But we still don't know what cost him his legs. We don't know what happened to put him in that breathing apparatus. We don't know a lot about Saw's journey that got him to where he was in Rogue One. There's not a lot of time between this appearance in Rebels and Rogue One. So something bad happens very, very quickly, and it changes Saw Gerrera fundamentally in a very, is physically, mentally, emotionally. Saw's a very different character when we catch up to him in Rogue One. And again, we still don't have the events documented in Star Wars that show us what exactly happened to him that cost him his limbs, cost him, requiring him to get that breathing apparatus. But though perhaps just a crazy huffing of rhydonium would do it. Not sure about that. that might be speculation, but I hope they are hard at work on kind of filling in some of these gaps in Saw's life. And maybe they're not because, Forrest Whitaker's maybe, he's still around. You can get Forrest Whitaker to do things. Maybe Saw's somebody that pops up in another movie at some point. We can't get away from the Rise of the Empire era, so Saw could be somebody that we go back to down the road. I don't know. We'll see. I guess I just would like to know more. I'd also be curious to know what the fate of the Geonosians. I don't know if that ever comes out again. We'll talk more about that in the second part of this two-parter, because we sort of have set the table up for that very, very nicely. Again, Saw wants Click-Clack. He wants Click-Clack to spill the beans. So that's where we head off, like a Geonosian that Saw believes is responsible for everything. All right. I've already said too much about the egg. I mean, let's be honest. I might as well just go into part 2, but I'm not gonna. So we're going to save that for next week. I like this episode a lot. Again, it's a lot of nice table setting for what I think is a really thrilling conclusion to part 2. So yeah, check it out. Ghost of Geonosis, part 1. 8 buckets. 8 buckets, nice, easy watch, and you get some really interesting character dynamics. Again, something important for Ezra to learn in his development. Not everyone in the Rebellion is there with the same moral code as you, and that's important to know. And again, something that we dive into more when we talk about Andor and that sort of level of seriousness with the Rebellion. But it's nice that you have these like hopeful, morally upstanding characters to counterbalance the ones that work more in the gray, like Saw, like Luthen. So interesting stuff, good stuff. Glad it's here. All right, yes, 8 buckets, friends. And with that, we're going to get out of here. I gave you the Star Wars news. We talked about an episode. We're going to go home. But I want you to go out there. I want you to go out into the world and be great Star Wars fans, kind, supportive, respectful, understanding, and embracing of other ideas. Do it. It's okay. We don't have to agree with everybody. We can have fun, civil chats. Civil chats. Can you believe it? Where we are just kind and respectful and listen to the other person's point of view and say, I respectfully disagree with you, and here's why. And that's okay. That's a fun fandom, one that I want to be part of. Stop yelling at each other. Toxic fandom's gross. Sorry, bit of a screed there. All right, Bucketheads. Buckethead Nation, you are the best. You are the best supporters out there in the entire cosmos. Thank you for all the love and support. Check me out on the socials at Mando_Vision, Twitter /X and Insta. There will be some new posts on the Insta soon, I promise. I've been slacking off on that lately, but we're getting back to it. Hit me up on Blue Sky at Mandovision, and you can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. if you can, 555. Sweet, sweet, sweet 5-star reviews. They are what drive the ship. They are the hyperfuel for this podcast. So if you can, give us those, and we will see you guys next time on the podcast, where we talk about the Ghost of Geonosis Part 2. Get ready. But in the meantime, remember, this podcast, it only ends one way, friends. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.